Well, you have heard Jeff. You would like to comment on what he has said. Then once you finish that, then I will ask some other questions.
Thank you, Ambassador Kumar, and thank you, friends. I somehow feel that there is a sense of irony when Prime Minister Modi went to the United States and the US President discussed North Korea. Because if only the Indian position on Pakistan was accepted in the 1987, especially in 1987, November and December, I think the North Korean crisis could have been avoided. In December 1987, US Senate passed a resolution, the famous Ainu-Castan resolution, which more or less justified and equated Pakistani nuclear program with that of the Indian nuclear program, despite heavy objection from the Indian side. India's position has always been that we have a legitimate nuclear program, but the Americans knew about the fact that the Pakistani nuclear program was based on clandestine activities, yet they supported sanction of huge military hardware for Pakistan. And also, in the same legislation, supported in a way indirectly and justified the Pakistan nuclear program. It was a great tragedy that is now lost in Cold War history. But for that incident, that legislation, I don't think Pakistan could have sort of, become the kind of proliferator that it became finally. So, I feel that finally the Americans have come to our side because now they are talking about North Korea. Because without those days and those diplomatic setbacks to India, North Koreans perhaps would have been sort of, prevented finally that sort of nuclear, whatever knowledge they have got. But that's a different story. However, thanks for the overview that you have given, Mr. Sexton, but I would go into the detail a bit of historical detail and look back in time and say that some of the optics that we have seen in Washington, D.C. is not really new for us when we take a long historical overview. President Truman, in fact, sent his personal aircraft, the Sacred Cow, for Prime Minister Nehru for his first visit. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi hosted the American president in the ambassador's residence in 1966 for an official dinner, and we know it was a landmark interaction between the two sides. Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi not only was hosted by Ronald Reagan administration, in fact, he hosted a birthday party for the vice president in the same visit. So we have that sort of bonhomie and that sort of warmth. But what really matters is, what really comes after the visit. Do we have a lot of strategic takeaway from the visit, from this particular visit that we are discussing today? I think looking back in time, that is the biggest question, that we don't really have a lot of comfort time in our hand. As soon as Prime Minister Modi returned, we have the China issue flaring up. We have Pakistan on the other hand. So the big issue is, apart from the H-1B visa and other such relatively softer bread and butter issues, can the United States give a more ironclad guarantee when it comes to the strategic concerns of India? That is going to be the ultimate test of Modi-Trump diplomacy. It's perhaps... Well, thank you for that. But then I would say that really the real concern right now, given the kind of situation that we are facing on our borders with China, and the kind of, some people are now criticizing our government's foreign policy, that we are appearing to be increasingly isolated. President Trump went to Saudi Arabia for a great meeting with all the Islamic countries' leaders. The Indian Prime Minister came after that. So we also have to remember that. So where are we really in the American scheme of things? Are we really the great friends, or apart from becoming defense partners, are we really strategic partners that you are worried about? I would like to see that becoming a reality. And as far as personal chemistry is concerned, I think the hugs are a good weapon for building up interpersonal ties, especially on the top level. But yet, that's also very new. We have seen personal chemistry before. All that I would say is that, given the timing of the visit and even as we speak, Prime Minister Modi is in Europe. Given all the developments happening around us, I'm more focused on what is the American support to our long-term strategic concern about China and Pakistan. Will the United States be supporting us more forcefully? Will the United States do the heavy lifting that's necessary, especially in the nuclear suppliers group? Can the United States do a lot more heavy lifting in the United Nations Security Council, since India is a strong contender for the post of the permanent membership in the Security Council? So these are the main concerns that I think Prime Minister Modi, I hope he or his team members have already mentioned it, because without those takeaways, I don't think this particular meeting is going to be of very lasting importance to us. I believe that he has extended President Trump an invitation to visit India very soon. I hope President Trump visits India soon so that we can take up our strategic concerns more forcefully with him. That's all perhaps I would say for the moment.
Well, thank you, Kalol. As a hard-nosed journalist, you have made very provocative statement. I am sure you responded to by others. But before I ask Dhruv, let me ask you, what about after the summit meeting? Is there more convergence between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi's perception, understanding, appreciation, analysis, what's going on in Afghanistan and Pakistan?
Well, India and the United States worked most closely on Afghanistan in the 1980s, because that is when India and the United States, along with the Soviet Union, and the veterans here would perhaps support this, worked on the famous Zahir Shah formula, when King Zahir Shah was approached for building a post-Soviet coalition government in Kabul. Unfortunately, that formula did not succeed, and as a result, what came after the Soviet end of the Soviet occupation was a vacuum which was filled up by forces like Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the rest. But the fact is, we have to learn a lesson from that failed negotiation, and we have to see what can we, that is Indians and the Americans, can do today. When I look at Afghanistan today, I feel we are really behind time. The Pakistanis, the Chinese, and the Russians have raced ahead, and we're considering all the developments that is happening in Kabul and in Kandahar and those bordering areas of Afghanistan, Pakistan. They have really raced ahead, and they are trying to fill up that vacuum which is emerging once again. But where are the Indians? Where are the Americans? I'm sure the Americans are already there, but are they engaging us for Afghanistan? That is what I would like to know from the American representatives, perhaps here, if they know it, that are the Americans really taking the Indians, especially since our concern on Afghanistan is real. It's not a figment of imagination.
Let me ask one more question before you go. What about climate change? You all know President Trump has decided to withdraw from Paris Agreement, but still they can be of assistance to India in terms of sharing technology which is needed for clean energy, clean coal energy, this energy grid, and all kind of other sort of technology which we need and we can get from US.
Well, as far as India-US clean energy trade is concerned, this will go on with or without climate change agreement. What is of more importance is the leadership that the United States had to provide to the climate change negotiations, because that leadership slot can't be filled up by any other country. So that is a major signal that the US administration has already given us, that that leadership perhaps will not come from the US. The challenge is, however, will it survive? Will the mechanism survive without the US leadership?
Thank you, Kalor. Well, you are free from my side.